What's up, everybody? Okay, just checking. Yeah, it's real, but I had a couple people tell me that I need to move the microphone down. But I really don't want to be on camera, and this is just so I don't get tagged for inauthentic content. They're purging a lot of channels that do voice narration only. So I'll meet you halfway here. So Zelipsynk's aide PR woman, she basically worked in his ministry of truth, as Orwell would put it, and she's confirmed a couple things that we were all thinking already. And I don't mean this in a bad way, but she is pretty, or was at least, naive about a lot. And you can really tell some cultural differences with things like it being normal to hang out at the strip club. And yeah, she confirms that Z Dog was coked out of his mind. And I think a lot of these guys are. It's just the smart ones don't get caught.
And when we were preparing to the interview, I was reading the notes, explaining who is the journalist, what he needs to say, the messaging, the questions. He does not like reading, to be frank. Usually, he's more, like tries to listen to you, and then he takes his like 15 minutes in the bathroom. And I'm telling you that I was always surprised that he was going out a different person, like really always a different person.
So you'd be briefing him.
Then he goes to the bathroom, he spends there 15 minutes, and he's going out energized, full of, action, ready to say everything.
Sniffing.
So I don't want to say something that I didn't see,
I understand.
but I met too many people. I met doctors. I met, people who spend time with him in the clubs. And I talked to the people who has been knowing him for like 20, 25 years.
Okay, we'll get back to Big Z and his proclivities here in a minute, but I want to talk about the big picture of things real quick. A couple videos ago, I talked about City of London, and without going into a long diatribe on this, these are the gray bankers everybody's looking for. Yeah, some of them are Masons, some of them are Grays, but it's not 1815 anymore. The world changes constantly, and the YouTube narrative of how the world works is 200 years old. The City of London, the secret of Swiss banking system, and all the offshore banking, like in the Cayman Islands that you've ever heard of, is the shadow banking cabal. The IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, they all work off the euro dollar, which is taking US money and holding it overseas. These are the money men behind the WEF and the Forever Wars and all this stuff that's happened since the 1970s. And it's pretty important to understand that the real shenanigans didn't start till the 70s. So I'm going to call that cabal the Imperialists from now on, and here's their logo. They are also the people that have controlled world energy markets since the 70s. And what do I keep telling you guys their modus operandi is? To manage scarcity, to keep limited supplies at high cost.
Yeah, can I finish this
Please.
moment? The thing is that the conflict that has escalated recently is about a pipeline, oil pipeline. Hungary was getting Russian oil through Ukraine,
Right.
and it's damaged. And Zelensky made this again performance, huge performance, as if he is a brave hero who is fighting against Russian oil, Russian gas, all Russian, etc., etc. At the same time, Ukraine, on technical level, is repairing the pipeline. The European Commission is insisting that we do it as fast as possible. And Ukraine is sending the explanation to the European Commission. It will take some time, but we are offering you another pipeline so that there is no energy crisis. So the work is there, right? And
Okay, so first understand that the whole purpose of that conflict was to keep Russian oil from reaching markets. The imperialists behind the scenes, in conjunction with our own intelligence agency, I'm sure, helped to install Zelenskyy in the 2014 coup. Only they can't openly come out and tell everybody that that's what they're doing, especially when there's an energy crisis in Europe that they created. So officially, they're telling all of their citizens that, oh, they're sending aid and technical expertise over to help rebuild these pipelines so they can tell their people they're trying to fix the problem they created. When in reality, what was the first major blow to Russia during this conflict? the Nord Stream pipeline that carried Russian LNG to Europe where they need it. And they told everybody Putin's just a madman and he blew up his own billion-dollar pipeline and is missing out on all kinds of revenue year after year. They've concentrated their attacks on Russia's oil infrastructure, and they're constantly taking out their ports that ship everything out to the global market. So attacking their energy infrastructure was probably the number one goal when they decided to help instigate a coup and install Z. But here's something a lot of people overlook is once you install someone in a position, then they actually have power there. The entire armed forces looks to this dude. So whether or not he fulfills his end of the bargain or not is completely on him. He has also used that position to rob pension funds and all kinds of stuff that we'll get into. So ever since 2014, NATO has crept closer and closer to Russian soil, which was the one major deal that broke the Cold War was we'll keep a buffer zone here. And after them literally putting a biolab right on the border, Putin had enough and went hot. But if you recall, right at the very beginning, Putin put out a deal and said, okay, look, we can solve all this right now. And it sounded like they were close to getting a deal done. Then Boris Johnson of England, the biggest weft puppet of them all, made a surprise visit to Kiev and told their boy Z, nope, you're going to war with this dude. We're sending everything we got your way that we can get away with. And now, 4 years into this, Trump just negotiated the first ceasefire over the last weekend that they've had. Britain was also involved with giving them long-range missiles that they shouldn't have. And Putin told Britain, you guys just made a big mistake. We're not going to forget this. So Britain and the imperialists are the brains and the money behind this. Now fast forward to present day. On March 17th, 2026, Big Z went to Buckingham Palace and met with King Charles, and they discussed the future of things. Then on May 1st, King Charles comes to America and meets with Trump. And just 1 week later, they have a 3-day ceasefire, which is the first one in a 4-year conflict. And then Putin says he thinks that the conflict is coming to an end. So look, there was all kinds of BS gossip about what King Charles was actually doing in America. And I can't tell you how much I'm sick of the internet and their speculation. And yes, I'm speculating to a degree, but let's see. Z goes to England. England comes to America. Ceasefire next week. Those are pieces that actually seem to fit. And now listen to what he says right here.
Is part of what Henry Kissinger described as Kennedy's soaring vision of an Atlantic partnership based on twin pillars, Europe and America. That partnership, I believe, Mr. Speaker, is more important today than it has ever been.
Now, look, he's speaking before Congress, and he's talking directly to the people in our dark state that know what's going on. And he says that partnership is more important today than ever. What partnership? The one set up by Henry Kissinger and our dark state. Kissinger was the mole working with the imperialists that set up the petrodollar and sold out America. In 1982, he let slip, I kept the British Foreign Office better informed and more closely engaged than I did the American State Department. Here he is all buddy-buddy with K. Schwab of the WEF. Here he is with the Shah of Iran, who I've already shown you guys multiple times that the Shah said that the 1970s energy crisis was 100% orchestrated and that the U.S. had not been buying any less oil than they were the year before. So when King Charles comes before Congress and invokes the name of Henry Kissinger, there's a lot of people in the dark state that know exactly what he's talking about. That the Council on Foreign Relations says is a degree of controlled disintegration in the world economy is a legitimate objective for the 1980s and may be the most realistic one for a moderate international economic order. Manage scarcity, keep the plebs poor and begging for more. So while everybody on YouTube's talking about the secret, unknowable Mr. Burns in the background that runs everything, I'm showing you guys real fucking people in the real world that are making all of this stuff happen. I'm tired of the BS misdirection that's just confusing people as they go along. Things should get clearer and clearer as you go along. not more confusing.
Of 9/11, when NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time, and the United Nations Security Council was united in the face of terror, we answered the call together, as our people have done so for more than a century, shoulder to shoulder, through 2 world wars, the Cold War, Afghanistan, and moments that have defined our shared security. Today, Mr. Speaker, that same unyielding resolve is needed for the defense of Ukraine and her most courageous people.
Yep, more money for Ukraine was the biggest standing ovation of the day. It's because that is the war that the imperialists want, and their whole objective was to keep Russian oil from hitting markets. Now, I know there's people that are going to say, yeah, but Trump funded billions of dollars to Ukraine. Yes, he did, after being blackmailed for it. The EU told Trump, if you don't fund this, then we're going to start selling off all of our U.S. Treasury holdings, equaling $2.34 trillion, described as a nuclear option. And a sell-off like that could cause a surge in U.S. interest rates, freezing housing markets, and trigger massive credit crisis. See, that's how power works. Most people aren't under the thumb of other people. And I'm positive at this point that Trump ain't being beheld by anyone. The way power is yielded is by using whatever leverage point you have against the other person. In this case, you either fund this or we're selling off all of our treasury bonds and we're crashing your frickin' economy. So evidently at that time, Trump didn't have the cards. But after seeing Z go to Buckingham Palace come to America, and then Putin saying, oh, well, we're getting close to an end of the war here, evidently he's got some new cards to play. Allow me to elucidate everything you've seen for the last 10 years. As soon as Trump ran for office, an outsider, and they realized that he was going to win, the first thing they did is start screaming, Russia, Russia, Russia. Trump is a Putin puppet. Because the biggest nightmare to the imperialists is if an outsider gets in there and allows Russia access to world markets. So right off the bat, they painted Trump into a corner where if he did anything that looked favorable at all to Russia, then he's Putin's puppet. This is the real reason behind all of the Russia mania that everyone saw. And then when he got in there, he found out about Burisma and all of the Crooked Joe stuff that was going on, had a phone call with Zelenskyy about it, and immediately the media tried to use that phone call to get him impeached. Trump knows all about 10% from the big guy coming from Burisma, an energy company. Their whole goal was to suppress Russian energy, and then they had a stake in Ukrainian energy. I don't know how much clearer I can make things here. So now that you guys see the bigger picture here, let's get back to Z-Dog.
First of all, he's not a person whom you see on camera. He's a very different person. He changes masks all the time. He is emotionally uncontrollable.
Emotionally uncontrollable.
Yeah, he doesn't control his emotions. He's often hysterical, and he thinks that every person is disposable. He doesn't have empathy that he plays. He's absolutely insanely great actor, and that brought us a lot of support in 2022. But his acting doesn't have any substance, and everything that he is saying, it's so detached from the reality.
Yes.
And majority of the things that he's saying, it's either manipulation, or it's a fact that is being taken from the context, or it's pure lies. And millions of people still believe that supporting Zelenskyy means supporting Ukraine. But
Yes.
today, it's different. You'll recollect that almost every Western leader and Western delegations that were coming to Ukraine before the war, they treated Zelenskyy as a political novice. They saw he was low educated, unqualified, and low depth. But then overnight, he just turned into this great face of democracy.
Yes.
But it feels like the West created the myth, fell into it, and doesn't that the West keeps ignoring the fact that this, beneath that Zelensky's rhetoric, heroic rhetoric, he keeps accumulating power. And I'm not afraid to say he keeps hollowing the very same people he claims to save.
So, yeah, he's the narcissistic yokehead that we all thought him to be. You remember this NATO party? You got all these aristocrats here that know that he's not one of them. He's just one of the money washing boys. And everybody knows that he was put in place to do his job, to stop Russian oil from reaching markets.
Interviewed by Zelenskyy and Mr. Yermak, then chief of staff of President Zelenskyy. And he was told that during the interview, he would need to come up with the schemes of money laundering so that they are financed from the Ministry of Social Policy. And Ministry of Social Policy is the ministry that is responsible for pensions. So when we're talking about those poor pensioners, and knowing the fact that Zelenskyy himself approves the schemes of money laundering, I mean, is he guilty? I want your audience to respond to that, okay?
Honey, I think this is a lot bigger than you realize. So she actually saw how he is dipping into the pension funds and robbing everybody blind in his country. But what she obviously didn't see was they got 127 billion from the US only, and he has been going around on a nonstop world tour for 5 years, getting more money from everybody. Meanwhile, people in his country are struggling. Soldiers are starving on the front line. They're hobbling together drones. I don't know if you've watched how this all works over there, but they spend all day flying $50 drones over with a payload. And there's probably 5% tops of all the foreign aid that's come in that's actually gone into armaments. I wouldn't doubt it if it was 1%.
She was saying, look, there are so many positive things that are happening. You're promising something, but it doesn't happen. She was, of course, very diplomatic. She didn't say it like that, but that was the thought. And he said, it doesn't matter what's happening. The most important thing, we need 1,000 of talking heads. And if 1,000 of talking heads tells positive things, then positive things are happening, that people believe that there are positive things. And she kept arguing, and she brought a very good example. She said, there was a group of internally displaced people from Donbass, families who lost homes, and Zelenskyy promised them apartments. And we don't speak about thousands or hundreds. There were like 10 apartments or something like this. And nobody took care about that. So he promised, the families were waiting, nobody took care about that. So she said, if there are no those apartments, people will know that there are no apartments. It doesn't matter how many talking heads will say that there are apartments, right? And he said, no. If talking heads, 1,000 people tell you that this is happening, then this is happening. So she continued to argue, and he became very irritated. And he put his hands like this, what he was doing. He leaned to the table, he looked at us, and he said in a very irritated tone, I need Goebbels propaganda if you want. I need Goebbels propaganda. I need thousands of talking heads of Goebbels.
She, of course, is talking about this Joseph. And it wasn't just there. This propaganda was going worldwide. But look, I told you guys back in 2024, if Trump gets back in there, then I'm going to have to rethink how much power the dark state and the imperialists actually have. Because what it looks like to me is all they have is a bunch of talking heads and media and persuasion, but no real power. They don't control any armies. That's real power. All they can do is try to subvert Americans in order to gain real power. If you get in charge, if you're the commander in chief of the US, then all of the generals answer to you. And you know what? 10 years ago, I believed the YouTube narrative too, that it's just a ceremonial spot that doesn't really mean anything. But now my views have definitely evolved, and I see that Trump is using that power against Iran to attack City of London, the Imperialists, and their global monopoly on energy.
When Donald Trump came to power, there was a member of parliament who wrote on Telegram, Zelenskyy, now you need to stop this war. And yes, you will lose the next elections, but stop this war. Trump will push you, stop this war. And he was in jail in 3 days. He's still in jail. And
Really?
I talked to security services, and they said he never talked to Russia since 2021, no connection, but he is accused in treason. And there are a lot of people who are. would think that my country would be the one where people are grabbed on the streets and forced to the front lines. I never would think that we all agree and stay silent to the fact that Zelenskyy uses frontline as the punishment. And
he uses the war as a punishment? Political punishment?
Yeah. He even was open about that. He was saying if somebody does something bad, we need to punish them and send to the front line. That was his statements. But there are people who are sent there just because they're critics of Zelenskyy, you know. This is an open secret. The thing is that I've never seen him taking drugs. However, for writing my book, I met a lot of people who confirmed that they saw him taking drugs in different clubs. Only one saw him taking drugs in 2021. I learned who is the supplier from 95th quartile, and I met that person. And
you met Zelensky's drug dealer?
I'm not saying he's a drug dealer. He's a guy from 95th quartile. And
what's 95th quartile?
95th quartile, it's entertaining company of Zelenskyy. 95th quartile, where he comes from. It's the guy who is an actor, and he behaved really in a strange way. His eyes and his behavior. We're preparing to the interview. You know, I was reading the notes, explaining who is the journalist, what he needs to say, the messaging, the questions. He does not like reading, to be frank. Usually, he's more, tries to listen to you. And then he takes his 15 minutes in the bathroom. And I'm telling you that I was always surprised that he was going out a different person. Really, always a different person.
So you'd be briefing him.
Then he goes to the bathroom, he spends there 15 minutes, and he's going out energized, full of, action, ready to say everything.
Sniffing?
So I don't want to say something that I didn't see.
I understand.
But I met too many people. I met doctors. I met, people who spend time with him in the clubs. And I talked to the people who has been knowing him for 20, 25 years.
So look, I see a lot of people looking at the Iran conflict saying that this is the same old forever wars that we've been in forever. And I don't see it that way. Ukraine is the forever war imperialists. What Trump is doing in Iran right now is breaking up that cabal. And yes, it's making everything suck right now. The price of everything is high. But look, when people hire me to come in and remodel their house, the first thing I do is come in and tear everything apart so that I can rebuild it. That's what's going on right now. And as soon as this all gets tidied up, the world is going to go from the imperialists managing scarcity to an abundance of cheap energy on the markets, which is going to bring the price of everything down. And I know I'm just another talking head on YouTube, just a dummy that swings a hammer. But right now, I'm going on record and very clearly articulating what I see happening in the world. And in a year from now, we're going to know who's right. The Mr. Burns' guys out there or what I'm saying. And with Trump's trip to China this week, it's just another piece on my puzzle board that is fitting into place. I actually started working on that video before this one, so I'll have it out soon. I had a comment the other day that kind of made me laugh. They said, Static, I want to be more like you because you seem like you've got your shit together and you're always doing stuff. And then he told me about some hard times he's having right now. So this is just a message to you, I forgot your name, sorry, and everybody. 6 years ago when I started this channel, I was living in a van down by the river, actually down by the ocean, and had all kinds of personal problems. And I'm not going to lie, I had somebody help me out that was a major break in my life. But also what's changed is I no longer sit around and wallow in that nervous energy and let it eat me up inside. I take all of that angst and uneasiness and I apply that energy to constructive things now. So if you're having a hard time and life's rough, just remember, things aren't going to get fixed all by themselves and they're not going to get fixed all at once. It's going to be one step at a time, put one foot in front of the other and just keep going. And if you don't take my advice on that, I'm going to sick my attack monkey on you. Shout out to Paul Russell. Appreciate that, man. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll catch you on the next one. Static out.